gonna take crackerjack timing, Wang.
Total concentration. You ready, Jack?
I was born ready.
Welcome back to Thinking Critical. This is Wes, and recently, Daredevil creator Chip Zdarsky, they put out the cover for their annual, and it had some words on it that immediately it brings back horror, nightmares for Marvel Comics readers. It was Daredevil One More Day. That was going to be the annual. It came out this week. Obviously, everybody wants to know what this means. One More Day, along with Spider-Man, means one of the worst comic stories in the history of the industry. Drove people away from the hobby, and they never came back. I've heard that story multiple times. But this is a different case. Daredevil One More Day is actually pretty damn good. And here with me to talk about that is the poobah of comics himself. Perch, how you doing?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me on.
Well, I'm glad you can make it. And I do want to say this. If you're visiting the channel or you haven't subscribed yet, subscribe to Thinking Critical YouTube. Hit the bell for notifications. Give us a thumbs up if you enjoy this conversation. Let us know if you want more content like this. Give us an enormous thumbs down if you disagree with our take on Daredevil One More Day. Either way, we would love to hear your feedback in the comment section below. Perch also does 2 to 3 videos a day about the comic book industry. There is a link to his channel in the video description, and there'll also be an opportunity at the end of the video to subscribe to Comics by Perch. All right, Perch. So obviously with a name like One More Day, you're almost putting yourself behind the 8 ball. I think Chip Zdarsky did this on purpose. I think he wanted to take the title One More Day and kind of use the idea behind One More Day, but use it positively and with great effect with Daredevil. And I think he was very successful.
Yeah. I think, the like you said, the title One More Day obviously has a connotation in a lot of people's minds, and most a negative connotation. It's one of those storylines that for whatever reason, Marvel stubbornly hangs on to, even though I think they'd make just a ton of money by erasing it. But who needs money anyway? So it is one of those things that definitely has a negative, atmosphere around it. But Zdarsky takes it and uses it for this story, and thematically, it is addressing some of the same points. There is a retcon of sorts that kind of happens here. That's not exactly the right word. A changing of reality, maybe, is a better way to put it. But like you said, it's actually an interesting contrast, because here it's executed quite well. It certainly changes things up in a major way, but it's additive and not subtractive. And I think that's the big kind of comparison between the two. This adds to Daredevil. It doesn't take away. Whereas Spider-Man, even though it was even though it was said to add a new dimension to the character, it really just reduced.
I couldn't agree with you more. That's exactly how I would say it. They used the same plot device, the same trope, but instead of detracting from the character and taking something away that everyone loved, Chip Zdarsky uses that, and he takes away something that was there but not really fleshed out, and adds a breadth to the character. And he does change the origin of Matt Murdock, Daredevil. In the past, Matt Murdock acted like he was Mike Murdock, like they were twins, to kind of explain. It was kind of part of his superhero identity, and how he was able to, kind of keep his personas from mixing up. And I guess along the way, Mike kind of somewhat became real, but he wasn't really real.
It was a clunky bit of story. So this was during the time when Marvel was pushing the Inhumans. And I believe the character was Reader, who basically kind of made this Mike Murdock character out of thin air to some extent, made this alternate persona real. And it was somewhat clunky at the time. I think it was a weird plot device. I think was that when Wade was writing the title. I'm not entirely sure, but at any rate, it was a very weird moment in the character's history, and it played out. It was a little storyline. It was there, but this was a case where Zdarsky kind of took that moment and really made something out of it. Actually tried to take this and maybe ground it a little bit. So it's weird to talk about kind of an alternate, reality being kind of coming to life as grounding, but the way it was left with the Inhumans tie-in was goofier, and this actually gave it some substance and something that could actually be used within this comic.
Yeah, so it's pretty cool. He's working with a character named the Hood, and he's got something called a Norn Stone, which apparently will make whatever your greatest wishes come true. Although it does come with the caveat, much like a lot of talismans that can grant wishes. the wish might turn into a nightmare. You don't
Yeah.
know eventually. It's going to kind of turn on you. So Mike Murdock is a scam artist. He ends up getting the code of this safe, grabs it out of there, and decides he's going to make himself a real boy, a la Pinocchio. And then we get this great sequence, and this is like the artist that's on there that's in like the real time. I can't remember his name. He's okay, but then we get a new artist, Mooneyham, and the art just picks up. It's very what's the word? It's really gritty, and we get an entire new origin story for Matt Murdock and Mike Murdock, his twin brother. That is a fuck up.
Yeah, no, it adds a pretty interesting development to Daredevil. It definitely changes his history in this process. So I think purists may be upset by this, but it also reads as it can be erased. We've got an out for it. You know, the Nornstones for longtime Marvel readers, actually not that long. I mean, this was in Dark Reign back when Norman Osborn and the Hood and others were kind of running the show, and Loki gave the Nornstones to the Hood to kind of power him up. So, the other question I have is when exactly did this take place? Was this a more recent event? We talked about the Hood kind of losing the stones and getting them back. How long has Mike Murdock been running around with this new reality? That's an interesting, twist in all this. There's a lot to this story that we get to kind of figure out. And I'm with you with the art. The art, it was a gritty feel. It felt like kind of 70s, 80s comics in a way. It felt like thematically in that time, and it fit the story. And I'm usually not a fan of when comics switch artists inside the comic, but here they're using it for the flashback. They do it really well, and it's well put together. There's obviously plenty of ways it can go south, but in terms of a way to kind of really mix up Daredevil's origin, and by the way, this was done in an annual. And I can't remember the last time Marvel put something actually substantial in an annual, to make the annual actually count. Those have become throwaway stories that nobody really pays attention to or cares about. This, if you're a Daredevil collector or a fan, you can't miss this comic. It's critical.
Absolutely. And I like I said, I was blown away. I was not expecting this. I knew they were hyping up that something big was going to happen. This is bigger than anything. And adding Mike Murdock to the story, and Chip does a great job, and I do mean a great job of driving home that all the stuff that you just read in Daredevil 1 through 21, I think it's 1 through 21, that's all happened. That's still all valid. But now Mike Murdock is part of the equation, because they do call back to the previous issues if you want to get caught up on the things happening in the annual. So all the stuff that you've read, it's not thrown out. It's just you have a new wild card thrown in. That's Mike Murdock. Like I said, he's kind of a screw up, and his dad knew he was a screw up from the beginning. It also seemed like Jack Murdock died later in life. Now, is that correct?
Yeah, it has to. The timing doesn't make sense because they talked the little bits about Murdock going to college and kind of some other moments. The timing is now different from what it was in the past, and I mean, there's also the possibility that it seems clear in the comic that Murdock did die, but it's not clear how. There's some new mystery to that. So that's another thing they get to uncover.
Yeah, it's like I said, it's really well done. But you could see the changes, but it doesn't change where we are right now. Daredevil he's talking to Mike. He's like, yeah, I'm waiting trial. They put me up on manslaughter. We don't know what's going to happen. I think it was really effective. Then they threw another curveball at the end. Along the way, you do see Mike as he's a kid. He's in trouble. I can't remember exactly the character's name, but it turns out he's best friends with Wilson Fisk's son. Yeah,
who is kind of another character. I mean, Fisk has this is another new development to kind of the Kingpin, and it's going to tie this family together. Like I said, at the beginning, this was all about adding things to the mythology. You've got a brother figure who's kind of a screw up, but has some loyalty to his brother. He's not a villain to his brother. There's still some level of family bond there. We've got a new family bond with the Kingpin. We've got these interesting kind of intersections of relationships. We have differences in how it's played out in life. So I think it's definitely going to give a huge new wrinkle. And the other nice part about it is this doesn't have to play out right away. Zdarsky is in the middle of a pretty solid Daredevil run right now. He's got a very clear storyline going on with his trial and other pieces. This is not something that has to immediately come and disrupt all of that. This is something that can simmer in the background and be added in when it's needed to. And it just changes up the origin. And if he wants to, this would also be easily undone. So it's a nice, I think this was a really nice wrinkle to Daredevil, and as a title that, has sometimes struggled with having enough things going on in it. Daredevil at times has been written very one note. It's also had some, legendary runs with Miller and some others. This is adding a lot of new dimensions to the whole Matt Murdock Daredevil story. And it feels like we're in the midst of a multi-year run here. I don't know how many more years Zdarsky plans to be on this book, but it feels like we're just getting started. I could easily see this go for another 4 or 5 years.
Yeah, there's also the other wrinkle when Mike Murdock is introduced in this comic book. He's essentially masquerading as his brother, using that as a con. Do you think, now that we're caught up and his whole life is changing, he's a real man now, now that the Norn Stone created him, is he going to be, causing his brother issues by pretending to be him, putting more allegations against his name?
Quite likely. I think it'll be interesting to see how this bond goes. And it's kind of this, again, the two are friendly, but Mike clearly doesn't seem to mind, using his brother's name to get away with scams. And he's always kind of been this way. So it's, and there's even kind of a hint that, maybe Jack, the dad, had a closer relationship with Mike than Matt. That relationship was more solid somehow. So there's just a lot of different ways this could go, and I'm excited to see where it goes.
I like what Chip Zdarsky's done. His run on Daredevil is way underrated, just as far as sales. It should be up in the top 10. Unfortunately, that is not the case, but it's probably the best ongoing comic series in the industry. That goes across indies and the big two. It's just the quality's been so high for over 2 years now.
Yeah, it's a really good story, and I think that this shows what happens, and this is where I wish the big two would do this more. And obviously, Zdarsky is a name. This isn't an unknown. But look at what happens when you get a writer who has some love, some affinity for the character, has a good story in mind, and you just say, commit to, we're not going to reboot this for, in 12 issues. We're going to just give this a nice multi-year run. We're going to let you tell a long story. This is a kind of quality that comes out. It feels like a lot of writers for the big two, and in particular Marvel, are writing like their job could be over tomorrow. And the storylines are written. What Jason Aaron's been doing on Avengers is just every storyline is just kind of thrown out there as if this is the last time he's going to write the book, and it feels completely disorganized. Whereas Zdarsky, it feels like at some point, I don't know how it happened, the company committed to giving him a long run, letting him tell his story, letting him pace it out. It doesn't feel decompressed. It doesn't feel like he's dragging his feet, but he's just telling a solid story. This is what Claremont storytelling was like in the 80s. This is what, the Perez run on Titans was like with Wolf. Just when we have a really great run on a comic, it's when the publisher trusts the writer to just take their time and tell a good story and not have to write for their job every 6 issues. And I would like to see more of it. You don't even have to put a big name writer on the book. Find somebody unknown who's just a solid writer, put them on a book like this. I think good things happen.
I will say this. I like the moxie on Chip Zdarsky to throw that one more day moniker on the comic book. It comes with a lot of baggage, and he essentially paints Joe Quesada. Everything Joe Quesada was trying to do with Spider-Man One More Day, he was successful with Daredevil One More Day. He went and he used a trope, changed the status quo, but he's refreshed the title and added something to a new wrinkle to it that makes it more exciting moving forward. Whereas Joe Quesada used that to take something away everyone loved and drove fans away. And I like that he rose to the challenge and he decided to meet it head on. And I think he knocked it out of the park. I can't imagine anyone using this to a better effect.
Yeah, it was done very well, and I'm very curious. I'd be very curious to get Quesada's reaction. Did he know this was coming? Was he involved in this decision? Because it did really kind of show up that whole
almost Hickman-esque when he's out there saying that he takes all Brian Michael Bendis' crumbs and makes meals with him.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
I like it.
I like it too.
Yeah, when it's like, oh, you made Goldballs one of the most worthless mutants ever. Now he's one of the most important mutants ever. Thank you. You know what I mean? I like that kind of stuff. I like rivalry. I like competition. I like when creators try to one up each other instead of just acting like they're all the best friends in the world.
Well, and especially when the result is a good comic book. I mean,
that's what the competition always breeds a better product.
Yeah, well, especially this kind of competition. I think it feels like somebody fighting to win, not somebody fighting to destroy.
Very well said, my friend. Thank you so much for joining me today, Perch. I couldn't recommend this comic book higher. If people didn't understand that, I forgot to give my bottom line up front. This is a highly recommend. It's not the highest recommend because this week Batman 3 Jokers came out, but it's right up there. If the art was better, if both artists were the quality of Chris Mooneyham, it would probably be a highest recommend. It would be a 5-star book.
I mean, it was a really good week. I mean, in a week where we were delivered Iron Man 2020 #6, we did get 3 Jokers and this Daredevil Annual. So we give and we take away. It's a little bit of both.
We'll just treat Iron Man 2020 as a palate cleanser for the next great comic we're actually going to read.
There you go.
All right, buddy. I appreciate it. And if you like what Comics Perch brings to the channel, he's got his own channel. If you haven't subscribed, right now there should be an icon that says Comics by Perch on the channel. You go select that. You can go subscribe to his channel. Really easy.
Thank you very much.
If you enjoyed this video, please give it a like. I would appreciate it very much. It helps us attract more views for the channel. Subscribe for future commentary, comic book news, and reviews. And don't forget to ring the bell for notifications. If you want to talk comics, movies, and much, much more, you can follow me on Twitter at Wes_from_TC. With that, Salamat Po, and I'm out.